In 1917, in the Portuguese village of Fatima, 3 peasant children received 3 prophecies from the Virgin Mary that shook the world. The first 2 secrets predicted world wars and Russia's role in the fate of humanity with astonishing accuracy. But the Vatican concealed the 3rd secret for 83 years. Even after its official disclosure in 2000, the controversy continues. What is it about this revelation that made 4 popes keep silent? Today, we will try to unravel one of the greatest mysteries of the modern Church and find out if we have really been told the whole truth about the 3rd secret of Fatima. The mysteries of the past continue to intrigue us today, reminding us that history is full of unsolved enigmas. If you are interested in historical investigations like this, subscribe to the channel and don't forget to like the video. What do you think? Is the Vatican really hiding part of the 3rd secret of Fatima? Or is the official version completely true? Share your opinion in the comments. In 1917, when Europe was bleeding in the trenches of World War I and revolution was raging in Russia, an event took place in the small Portuguese village of Fatima that forever changed the religious history of humanity. On May 13th, at noon, 3 peasant children were grazing sheep on the hill of Cova da Iria, unaware that they would witness a phenomenon whose consequences would be discussed for more than a century. Lucia dos Santos, aged 10, and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, aged 9 and 7 respectively, saw a dazzling figure above an oak tree, who introduced herself as the Virgin Mary. This was the first of 6 apparitions, each of which occurred on the 13th day of the following months. The children claimed that the Virgin Mary gave them 3 important prophecies, later called the 3 secrets of Fatima. Portugal was going through difficult times at that period. The Republican government, which came to power in 1910 after the overthrow of the monarchy, pursued an active anti-clerical policy. Churches were closed, priests were persecuted, and religious education was banned. In such an atmosphere, reports of apparitions of the Virgin Mary were received extremely negatively by the authorities. However, rumors of miraculous visions quickly spread throughout the area. By June 1917, the first pilgrims began to flock to the children. Local authorities tried to prevent this, even arresting the children, but it was impossible to stop the growing flow of believers. What was so special about what the children said that attracted the attention not only of ordinary peasants, but also of the highest church hierarchs? The uniqueness of the Fatima apparitions lay not only in their regularity, but also in the fact that, according to the children's testimony, the Virgin Mary gave them specific prophecies about the future of humanity. The first 2 secrets concern the wars and suffering that await the world, as well as Russia's special role in the coming events. But the 3rd secret was to remain a secret until a certain time. On October 13th, 1917, an event occurred that became known as the Miracle of the Sun. According to eyewitnesses, including journalists and photographers, the sun began to dance in the sky, changing colors and making unusual movements. This phenomenon was observed by about 70,000 people, making Fatima one of the most widely witnessed religious events in history. The Catholic Church initially treated the events in Fatima with caution. A thorough investigation was needed to separate truth from superstition and possible deception. The canonical investigation process began only in 1919 and continued for several years. Bishop José Alves Correa da Silva of Leiria conducted numerous interviews and studied medical reports and eyewitness accounts. The international situation of those years added particular relevance to the Fatima prophecies. World War I was indeed coming to an end, as the children had predicted, and a revolution had taken place in Russia, which, according to the second secret, was to spread its errors throughout the world. These coincidences could not fail to impress contemporaries. But why did the third secret cause such controversy? And why did the Vatican keep it secret for so long? The answer to this question requires a deep dive into the history of the relationship between the visionary Lucia and the higher church, authorities, as well as an understanding of the political situation of the 20th century. The secrets of Fatima turned out to be inextricably linked to the global upheavals of the century: 2 world wars, the Cold War, and fundamental changes within the Catholic Church itself. Lucia dos Santos was born on March 22, 1907, to Antonio dos Santos and Maria Rosa in the village of Aljustrel, near Fatima. She was the youngest of 6 children in a wealthy peasant family. From an early age, Lucia stood out among her peers for her lively character and leadership qualities. Her parents were deeply religious, and the girl was introduced to Catholic traditions from childhood. Francisco Marto was born on June 11, 1908, and his younger sister Jacinta was born on March 11, 1910. They were the children of Manuel Pedro Marto and Olimpia de Jesus, who was related to Lucia's mother. The Marto family was also among the wealthy farmers of the village of Aljustrel and was renowned for its piety. What made these children special witnesses? They differed greatly in character. Lucia was the eldest and most sociable. She spoke easily about her visions and was not afraid of questions from adults. Francisco, on the other hand, was dreamy and prone to prayerful contemplation. He claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary, but not to have heard her voice. Little Jacinta was the most impressionable and emotional. She not only saw and heard the Virgin Mary, but also experienced the visions of hell and the suffering of sinners shown to her with particular intensity. The children's education was minimal, which was typical for a Portuguese village at that time. Lucia attended the parish school and could read, but her cousins were practically illiterate. This circumstance was later used as an argument in favor of the authenticity of the visions. It was unlikely that poorly educated peasant children could have invented such complex theological concepts. How could children growing up in rural Portugal impress church hierarchs with the depth of their revelations? Their testimonies were remarkably consistent and detailed. Even under pressure from the authorities, threats, and attempts at bribery, they did not change their testimony. Psychological profiles compiled by researchers show children who were sincere but not naive, able to distinguish between what was important and what was secondary. Adults were particularly struck by the children's reaction to their own fame. Francisco and Jacinta showed virtually no interest in the material goods offered to them by pilgrims. They were more concerned with prayer and repentance for the sins of humanity, which was unusual for children of their age. Lucia, being older, understood the significance of what was happening, but also showed remarkable fortitude in the face of skepticism and even hostility. The family situation in the homes of the visionaries was ambiguous. Lucia's parents did not believe her stories at first, and even punished her for making things up. Lucia's mother, Maria Rosa, was particularly strict and demanded that her daughter admit to deception. The girl's father was more calm about what was happening, but he also had doubts. The situation in the Marto family was different. Francisco and Jacinta's parents believed their children quite quickly. The children's behavior between apparitions also attracted attention. They spent a lot of time in prayer, observed strict fasts, and wore hair shirts. All of this was initiated by themselves, without coercion from adults. Their prophetic statements were particularly impressive. Francisco and Jacinta said that they would soon die and go to heaven, which indeed happened during the Spanish flu epidemic in 1919 and 1920. Why was Lucia entrusted with recording the third secret? And how did this affect the rest of her life? According to the children's testimony, the Virgin Mary singled out Lucia, saying that she would live longer than the others and would bear witness to the events at Fatima. This prophecy came true. Lucia lived until 2005, becoming the last living witness to the apparitions. Medical and psychological examinations conducted by various specialists found no signs of mental disorders or a tendency to hallucinate in the children. Their intellectual development was age-appropriate, but their spiritual maturity was significantly above normal. This contradiction between childish spontaneity and the depth of religious experience became one of the key arguments in favor of the supernatural nature of the Fatima apparitions. The first secret of Fatima was related to the vision of hell that the Virgin Mary showed the children on July 13, 1917. According to Lucia's later recollections, the children saw a sea of fire in which the souls of sinners appeared as black and bronze figures, crying out in despair. This vision so shocked the children that Jacinta often cried and prayed for the salvation of sinners. The Virgin Mary explained to the children that she had shown them hell, where the souls of poor sinners go, so that they would understand the need for prayer and repentance for the salvation of humanity. This vision became the basis for understanding all subsequent prophecies and explained why the children took their mission of prayer and sacrifice so seriously. The second secret concerned the prophecy about the fate of the world and the special role of Russia. The Virgin Mary predicted the end of the current war, but warned that if people did not stop offending God, another, even more terrible war would begin during the reign of the next pontiff. She said that Russia would spread its errors throughout the world, provoking wars and persecution of the Church. Of particular significance were the words that in order to prevent these disasters, it was necessary to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which was to be done by the Pope, together with all the bishops of the world. Why was Russia specifically named as the key to peace on earth? And how was this prophecy perceived in the context of the revolutionary events of 1917? It is noteworthy that in July 1917, when this prophecy was received, the provisional government still held power in Russia, and the Bolsheviks seemed to be an insignificant political force. The October Revolution did not take place until the fall, so the prediction about Russia's role in spreading godlessness throughout the world seemed prophetic. The Virgin Mary also promised that in the end, Russia will convert and a period of peace will come. She spoke of the triumph of her Immaculate Heart and that the Holy Father would consecrate Russia to her, which would convert, and the world would be granted a period of peace. This prophecy was interpreted in different ways throughout the 20th century, especially in the context of the Cold War and the subsequent collapse of the Soviet Union. The first two secrets were recorded by Lucia in 1941 at the request of the Bishop of Leiria. Until then, their content had been passed down orally, which raised certain doubts about the accuracy of the wording. However, the main elements of the prophecies remained unchanged in all retellings. The reaction of the church authorities to the content of the first two secrets was mixed. On the one hand, The vision of hell was consistent with Catholic doctrine and served edifying purposes. On the other hand, the political predictions about Russia caused some concern, as they could be interpreted as interference by the Church in world politics. How did the first two secrets influence the Vatican's attitude towards the Fatima apparitions, and why was the third secret shrouded in such secrecy? The publication of the first two secrets in 1942 caused a wide international response. Many saw in them an explanation of the catastrophic events of the time. World War II, which indeed began during the reign of the next pontiff, Pope Pius XII. The prophecy about Russia was particularly actively discussed during the Cold War. Catholic circles saw the spread of communist ideology as the fulfillment of the Fatima prediction that Russia would spread its errors throughout the world. This strengthened the position of those who called for a more decisive fight against communism. The accuracy of the historical predictions of the first two secrets created special expectations regarding the third. If the first two turned out to be so prophetic, what could be contained in the third, which the Vatican had so carefully concealed? This intrigue fueled public interest and gave rise to much speculation. The existence of the third secret of Fatima became known almost immediately after the apparitions of 1917, but its content remained a mystery for decades. Unlike the first two secrets, which Lucia recounted orally as a child, the third was shrouded in secrecy from the very beginning. According to Lucia's testimony, the Virgin Mary explicitly stated that this secret should not be revealed until a certain time. The first references to the third secret appeared in the documents of the canonical investigation conducted by the Bishop of Leiria in the 1920s. The minutes of Lucia's interrogations record her words that the Virgin Mary had instructed her to keep part of the revelation she had received a secret. The girl explained that she could not talk about it because the time has not yet come. Interest in the third secret increased significantly after the publication of the first two in 1942. The accuracy of their prophecies regarding world events led many to wonder, what could be contained in the third secret if even the Vatican did not dare to make it public? The silence of the church authorities only fueled curiosity and gave rise to the most incredible assumptions. In 1943, Bishop José da Silva of Leiria asked Lucia for the first time to write down the contents of the third secret. However, the nun, who was 36 years old at the time, replied that she did not feel internally permitted to do so. She explained that the Virgin Mary had not forbidden her to write down the secret, but had not given her direct permission either. The situation changed in 1944, when Lucia became seriously ill. Fearing that the secret of the third secret might die with the last witness of the Fatima apparitions, Bishop Silva repeated his request more insistently. This time, he emphasized that writing down the secret did not mean its immediate publication. Lucia hesitated for a long time and prayed for clear guidance from above. In her own words, recorded later, she experienced extraordinary difficulties in trying to put the third secret on paper. What could be so terrifying or controversial that even writing it down caused her such inner conflict? Finally, on January 2, 1944, on the feast of the Holy Name of Jesus, Lucia wrote down the third secret on a single sheet of paper. She sealed it in an envelope with the instruction that it could only be opened by the Bishop of Leiria or the Cardinal Patriarch of Lisbon, and only after 1960, or in the event of her death, if that occurred earlier. The choice of 1960 as the date for possible disclosure gave rise to many interpretations. Some researchers believed that this date had symbolic significance, while others suggested that events would have taken place by then that would make the content of the secret less shocking or more understandable. The sealed envelope containing the third secret was kept in a safe at the bishop's residence in Leiria until 1957. During those years, only a few senior church officials knew of its existence, but rumors about the mysterious document gradually spread in Catholic circles. Every mention of the third secret sparked a new wave of speculation and theories. Why did Lucia herself choose the year 1960? And what did she mean when she said that the content would become clearer by that time? The answers to these questions could shed light on the true content of the third secret, but they remained a mystery even to those closest to the nun. Her caution and unwillingness to discuss the details of the third secret contrasted with the openness she showed when discussing the first two revelations. In 1957, the sealed envelope containing the third secret of Fatima was solemnly handed over to the Vatican. This transfer took place on the initiative of the new Bishop of Leiria, who considered it safer to keep such an important document in the papal archives. The envelope was delivered to Rome and placed in the Holy Father's personal safe in the Apostolic Palace. Pope Pius XII, who was in power at the time, decided not to open the envelope immediately. According to people close to the pontiff, he believed that the contents of the secret were intended for his successor, since the date 1960 fell on the next papacy. This decision added another layer of mystery to the document. After the election of Pope John XXIII in 1958, expectations reached their peak. The new pontiff was known for his openness and desire to renew the Church. Many hoped that he would decide to make the contents of the third secret public after 1960. What happened when the moment of truth arrived? And why did the Pope who opened the Second Vatican Council decide not to reveal the third secret of Fatima to the world? According to official information, Pope John XXIII read the contents of the secret in 1959, but decided to keep it hidden. Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani, prefect of the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, later recounted that after reading the secret, the pontiff said, "This does not concern my pontificate." The Pope decided to return the document to the archives and leave the decision on its publication to his successor. This reaction raised even more questions about what the secret might contain. Some Vatican sources claimed that the contents of the third secret so shocked Pope John XXIII that he was unable to find peace for several days. The pontiff allegedly told the cardinals that this prophecy does not concern our time, and that its publication could do more harm than good. The Vatican's silence continued under Pope Paul VI, who was elected in 1963. The new pontiff also familiarized himself with the contents of the secret, but did not change the policy of his predecessor. According to unofficial reports, Pope Paul VI consulted with several cardinals and theologians regarding the advisability of publication. Was the content of the third secret so controversial or frightening that 3 successive popes preferred to remain silent? Such behavior by the highest church hierarchs only fueled public interest and gave rise to the most incredible conspiracy theories. In the 1970s, public pressure on the Vatican intensified significantly. Catholic publications around the world published articles demanding that the third secret be made public. Petitions were organized by believers, and conferences dedicated to the theme of Fatima were held. All this created an awkward situation for the church authorities. Sister Lucia herself, in interviews given during this period, repeatedly stated that she had fulfilled her mission by recording the secret, and that the final decision rested with the church authorities. She emphasized that she had never demanded immediate publication and trusted the Holy Father's wisdom in this matter. However, her words that the content of the secret would become clearer after 1960 remained a mystery. The 20th century was a time of unprecedented silence from the Roman pontiffs regarding the third secret of Fatima. Each of the popes who succeeded one another on the throne of Saint Peter became acquainted with the contents of the mysterious document, but they all made the same decision: to keep the secret. This silence became increasingly eloquent and raised many questions in the Catholic world. Pope Pius XII, who reigned from 1939 to 1958, was the first pontiff who could have read the third secret after it was recorded in 1944. However, he chose to leave this honor to his successor. Those close to the Pope said that Pius XII considered himself not the pontiff for whom this revelation was intended. His successor, Pope John XXIII, known as the Good Pope, ushered in a new era in the history of the Catholic Church by convening the Second Vatican Council. His approach to church matters was characterized by unprecedented openness, which made his silence on the third secret even more mysterious. What could have caused such a progressive pontiff to refuse to publish the Fatima revelation? According to cardinals close to Pope John XXIII, after reading the secret, the pontiff began to pray especially hard for the unity of the Church. Some observers linked this to the possible content of the third secret, suggesting that it concerned internal problems within Catholicism. However, no official comments were made by the Holy Father. Pope Paul VI, who reigned from 1963 to 1978, continued the policy of silence of his predecessors. This pontiff was known for his agonizing deliberations over difficult decisions, which made his refusal to publish the secret even more significant. Paul VI repeatedly spoke publicly about the importance of the Fatima message, but the third secret remained under lock and key. Particularly intriguing was the fact that all three popes consulted with leading theologians of their time regarding the third secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI, later recounted that the content of the secret was discussed in closed meetings of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, but the decision to keep it secret was confirmed each time. Could three different popes, with different personalities and approaches to governing the Church, have independently come to the same conclusion about the undesirability of publication? Such unanimity could indicate either truly serious reasons for concealment or pressure from certain forces within the Vatican. The pontiff's silence contrasted sharply with their active participation in promoting the Fatima cult as a whole. All three popes openly supported the veneration of Our Lady of Fatima, contributed to the beatification and canonization of the visionary children, and approved the construction of the basilica in Fatima. But when it came to the third secret, there was an eloquent silence. In the 1970s, pressure on the Vatican intensified not only from believers, but also from within the church hierarchy. Some cardinals publicly spoke out in favor of making the third secret public, arguing that believers had a right to know the full content of the Fatima message. However, their calls went unanswered. The period of great silence ended only with the election of Pope John Paul II in 1978. The new pontiff, a native of Poland, had a special relationship with the Fatima message, linking it to his salvation from the assassination attempt on May 13, 1981. It was this pope who finally decided to lift the veil of secrecy, but this did not happen until 2000, more than 80 years after the Fatima apparitions. In the absence of official information about the content of the third secret of Fatima, The most incredible theories and assumptions flourished for decades. Catholic and secular publications around the world published articles attempting to guess what the Virgin Mary could have told the children that the Vatican had not dared to make public for more than half a century. One of the most common theories linked the third secret to a prediction of World War III. Supporters of this version claimed that the Virgin Mary warned of a global conflict that could destroy humanity. According to this theory, the Vatican concealed the prophecy so as not to cause panic among believers during the Cold War. Another popular hypothesis concerned a crisis within the Catholic Church itself. Some traditionalists suggested that the third secret contained a prediction of a period of decline in faith, apostasy among the clergy, and even a possible schism in the Church. Could the Virgin Mary have foreseen the upheavals that the Catholic Church experienced in the second half of the 20th century? The version about the prediction of the Pope's assassination was particularly actively discussed. This theory gained additional momentum after the assassination attempt on John Paul II on May 13, 1981, the anniversary of the first apparition at Fatima. Supporters of this version believed that the third secret foresaw this event, and possibly the death of the pontiff. Among the more exotic theories was the version about predicting the end of the world, or apocalyptic events. Some interpreters linked the third secret to the prophecies of the Apocalypse of John the Theologian, suggesting that it refers to the end times and the second coming of Christ. According to this theory, the Vatican concealed the date of the end of the world so as not to cause mass panic. Italian journalist Antonio Socci put forward the hypothesis that the third secret concerns the apostasy of the highest church hierarchs. In his opinion, the Virgin Mary warned of a period when the church leadership itself would stray from the true faith, which explained the Vatican's reluctance to publish such self-incriminating prophecies. Why did these theories become so widespread? And what does this say about the mood in the Catholic world in the second half of the 20th century? The popularity of apocalyptic versions reflected the general anxiety of the era: fear of nuclear war, the crisis of traditional values, and the growing secularization of society. French priest Abbé Michel de la Trinité published several books in which he claimed that the third secret predicted a great apostasy within the Church, beginning at its very top. He linked this to the reforms of the Second Vatican Council, which, in his opinion, led to the erosion of Catholic tradition. German theologian Father Malachi Martin, who had access to some Vatican documents, hinted that the third secret was related to the infiltration of satanic forces into the highest echelons of church authority. His vague statements only fueled interest in the content of the secret and gave rise to even more extravagant theories. Among conservative Catholic circles, a popular version was the prediction of a mass apostasy of the laity from the faith. Proponents of this theory saw the secularization of Western society, declining church attendance, and the crisis of religious vocations as the fulfillment of the Fatima prophecy. Interestingly, Sister Lucia herself repeatedly emphasized in rare interviews that the content of the third secret was already becoming clear from observing contemporary events. These words were interpreted in different ways, but many saw them as confirmation of one theory or another. However, were all these assumptions close to the truth, or was the real content of the third secret completely different? On June 26, 2000, Cardinal Angelo Sodano, Vatican Secretary of State, made a sensational statement during a Mass in Fatima, celebrated by Pope John Paul II. The Cardinal announced that the Holy Father had decided to make public the interpretation of the third secret of Fatima, which had been hidden for more than 80 years. According to the Vatican's official version, the third secret was a symbolic vision in which the children saw a bishop dressed in white being killed by soldiers. This bishop was accompanied by other bishops, priests, monks, and nuns, as well as many lay people of various social classes who were also persecuted and killed. The Vatican interpreted this vision as a prophecy of the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II on May 13, 1981. The symbolic death of the bishop in white corresponded to the real assassination attempt on the pontiff, who miraculously survived thanks to the intercession of Our Lady of Fatima. But could such a specific and, in essence, already completed event explain the Vatican's 80 years of silence? Many experts and believers met this interpretation with bewilderment. If the third secret concerned only the assassination attempt on the Pope, why was its content kept secret even after the event had taken place? Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, issued a detailed theological commentary on the third secret. He emphasized that the vision should be understood symbolically, not literally, and that it reflects the suffering of the Church in the 20th century as a whole, not just the specific assassination attempt on the Pope. The official publication also included a facsimile of Sister Lucia's handwritten text of the third secret. The document consisted of 4 pages and was written in Portuguese. However, even the publication of the original did not end the controversy, as many researchers pointed out oddities in the text and its structure. The Catholic world's reaction to the official disclosure was mixed. Some believers were relieved that the long-standing mystery had been resolved and agreed with the Vatican's interpretation. Others, especially traditionalists, expressed doubts about the completeness of the disclosure and suggested that the true third secret was still being hidden. Why did the official version fail to convince all skeptics? Critics pointed to several problematic points. First, the vision described the death of a bishop in white, while Pope John Paul II survived the assassination attempt. Second, the text mentioned mass persecution of clergy and lay people, which did not happen in connection with the assassination attempt on the pontiff. Sister Lucia herself confirmed the authenticity of the published text, but her reaction to the Vatican's interpretation was restrained. In an interview given after the publication, she agreed that the vision could refer to the assassination attempt on the Pope, but emphasized the symbolic nature of the entire revelation. Critics also pointed out that the published text of the third secret ended with an unfinished sentence, which could indicate that the document was not published in its entirety. The Vatican explained this as a peculiarity of Sister Lucia's recording of the vision, but doubts remained. An important aspect of the official disclosure was the Vatican's attempt to present the events of Fatima as complete. Cardinal Ratzinger emphasized that all 3 secrets refer to events of the 20th century and that Fatima's mission has been fulfilled. However, this position was met with objections from those who considered the Fatima message relevant to the present day. The assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II on May 13, 1981, was a key event in the history of the interpretation of the third secret of Fatima. On the anniversary of the first apparition of the Virgin Mary in Fatima, Turkish terrorist Mehmet Ali Agca fired 4 shots at the Pope in St. Peter's Square. Peter's Square, seriously wounding the pontiff. From the very first days after the assassination attempt, Pope John Paul II himself attributed his salvation to the intercession of Our Lady of Fatima. Already in the hospital, he told those around him, "One hand fired the shot, the other guided the bullet." The pontiff was convinced that the Virgin Mary had averted the mortal threat and preserved his life so that he could continue his papal mission. The symbolism of the date of the assassination attempt could not fail to impress his contemporaries. May 13th was the day of the first apparition at Fatima in 1917. For believers, this coincidence could not have been accidental, and many saw in it a sign of a special connection between the Pope and the message of Fatima. Could the date of the assassination attempt have been predicted in the third secret, recorded 37 years before the event? The investigation into the assassination attempt revealed a complex network of international connections. Ali Agca did not act alone, and the investigation uncovered links to the Bulgarian secret services and, possibly, the KGB. This discovery gave the event a geopolitical dimension, which corresponded to the content of the second secret of Fatima about Russia's role in world conflicts. Pope John Paul II, a Pole by birth, had witnessed the confrontation between the communist and Christian worlds throughout his life. His pontificate coincided with the final phase of the Cold War, when the role of Russia mentioned in the second secret of Fatima became particularly relevant. The assassination attempt was perceived by many as an attempt by the forces of evil to thwart the papal mission of spiritual liberation in Eastern Europe. After his recovery, the pontiff personally visited Fatima on May 27, 1982, to thank the Virgin Mary for his salvation. During this visit, he placed one of the bullets removed from his body in the crown of the statue of Our Lady of Fatima, symbolically placing the weapon of the assassination attempt under the protection of the Virgin Mary. The interpretation of the assassination attempt as the fulfillment of the third secret caused certain difficulties. The vision described the death of the bishop in white, but the Pope remained alive. Vatican theologians explained this by saying that the prophecy should be understood symbolically. It referred to the spiritual death and resurrection of the pontiff, who had gone through a mortal threat. However, is this interpretation convincing? And does the Pope's survival contradict the literal content of the vision? Critics pointed out that such hermeneutics allows almost any event to be linked to the prophecy, depriving it of its specificity and prophetic nature. While in prison, Ali Agca repeatedly changed his testimony regarding the motives for the assassination attempt. At various times, he claimed that he acted for political reasons, was an instrument of an international conspiracy, or received mystical instructions. After his release from prison, he even visited Fatima and laid flowers at the grave of the child seers. Paradoxically, the assassination attempt strengthened Pope John Paul II's belief in the message of Fatima and accelerated the process of beatification and canonization of the visionary children. Francisco and Jacinta Marto were beatified in 2000 and canonized in 2017. Lucia dos Santos was beatified after her death in 2021. The official disclosure of the third secret of Fatima in 2000 did not put an end to the controversy, but, on the contrary, sparked a new wave of criticism and doubt. Many researchers, theologians, and ordinary believers expressed dissatisfaction with the Vatican's interpretation, considering it incomplete or even distorted. One of the most authoritative critics was the Italian Vaticanist Antonio Sozzi, author of the book The Fourth Secret of Fatima. Sozzi claimed that the published text was only a descriptive part of the third secret, while its interpretation, given by the Virgin Mary herself, was still hidden in the Vatican archives. Critics pointed out structural differences between the third secret and the first two. In the first two cases, the vision was accompanied by words from the Virgin Mary explaining its meaning. The published text of the third secret, however, contained only a description of the vision without any explanation, which seemed incomplete and illogical. Could the third secret consist of two parts, the vision and its explanation, with the Vatican publishing only the first part? This version was supported by many researchers, pointing out that Sister Lucia herself hinted at the existence of a verbal message from the Virgin Mary, accompanying the vision in various interviews. Portuguese priest Father Antonio Martins dos Reis, who knew Sister Lucia well, claimed that the nun had repeatedly told him about the words of the Virgin Mary that explained the meaning of the third vision. However, these words were not included in the published version, which raised questions about the completeness of the disclosure. Another group of critics focused on analyzing the vision itself. They pointed out that the mass persecution of clergy and laypeople described in it did not correspond to the reality of the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. The vision spoke of many victims among various classes of the Church, which did not happen in 1981. Traditionalist Catholic circles put forward a theory that the third secret concerns a crisis of faith within the Church itself. In their opinion, the bishop in white symbolizes not the Pope, but the Church itself, which is undergoing internal decay and apostasy. Could the Virgin Mary have foreseen the upheavals that the Catholic Church experienced after the Second Vatican Council? Sister Lucia's own reaction to the Vatican's interpretation raised particular doubts. Although she formally confirmed the authenticity of the published text, her statements that the third secret is still being fulfilled suggested that the official disclosure was incomplete. American researcher Christopher Ferrara, in his book The Secret Still Hidden, presented a detailed analysis of the contradictions in the official version. He pointed out that the vision described a destroyed city and many corpses, which was not observed in connection with the assassination attempt on the Pope in St. Peter's Square. A group of Portuguese researchers led by Solidão Torres Rocha put forward the hypothesis that the true third secret concerns the fate of Portugal itself and contains prophecies about its future. They pointed to Lucia's numerous references to the special role of her homeland in God's plan of salvation. Is the Vatican really hiding part of the third secret? And if so, what could be the reasons for such a decision? Critics have suggested that prophecies about an internal crisis in Catholicism, which were unfavorable to the church hierarchy, may have been removed from the official publication. However, there was no direct evidence for this version, and the debate continued at the level of interpretations and assumptions. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI, played a key role in the decision-making process regarding the publication of the third secret of Fatima. As prefect of the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith since 1981, he was directly involved in all matters related to the Fatima apparitions and their interpretation. Ratzinger was one of the few church hierarchs who had access to the full text of the third secret long before its official publication. According to his colleagues, the future pontiff repeatedly consulted with leading theologians about the possibility and advisability of publishing the mysterious document. In 1985, Cardinal Ratzinger gave an interview to the magazine Jesus, in which he spoke publicly about the third secret for the first time. He confirmed its existence and stated that the content of the secret concerns the end times and is apocalyptic in nature. These words caused a sensation and a new wave of speculation about the content of the secret. What made this cautious and conservative theologian break the Vatican's long silence? Some observers think Ratzinger wanted to get people ready for the secret to be revealed, slowly lowering expectations and the mystique around the document. In the same interview, the Cardinal noted that the third secret contains nothing that is not already known from other sources of Christian revelation. He emphasized that the secret should be understood in the context of the general call to repentance and conversion that runs through the entire message of Fatima. Preparations for the publication of the third secret began in the 1990s. Ratzinger personally supervised the work of a commission of theologians tasked with preparing an official interpretation of the document. The commission included Cardinal Angelo Sodano, Archbishop Tarcisio Bertone, and several other high-ranking church officials. Particular attention was paid to the form of presentation. It was decided to first announce the interpretation of the secret orally during the papal mass in Fatima, and then to publish a detailed document with theological commentary. This approach made it possible to control the public's reaction and, if necessary, to adjust the presentation of the material. Ratzinger insisted that the publication be accompanied by a serious theological analysis that would place the third secret in the context of Christian eschatology. His commentary, published in 2000, was an attempt to provide a rational explanation of the mystical experience and its historical interpretation. In his commentary, the Cardinal emphasized the symbolic nature of all the Fatima visions. He explained that divine revelations are always clothed in images that are understandable to the recipients, and that a literal understanding of prophecies can lead to incorrect conclusions. Critics accused Ratzinger of over-rationalizing the message of Fatima. They argued that his theological approach deprived the revelations of their prophetic power and turned them into ordinary religious reflections. Did such an interpretation really correspond to the spirit of the Fatima apparitions? After his election as Pope in 2005, Benedict XVI continued the course of demystifying the secrets of Fatima. In his speeches, he repeatedly emphasized that the mission of Fatima was complete, and that believers should focus on the basic Christian virtues rather than on the search for new revelations. However, it was not possible to completely close the subject of the third secret. The controversy continued, and many believers still considered the official interpretation to be incomplete. This forced the Vatican to periodically return to the subject and provide additional explanations. Parallel to the official Vatican interpretation of the third secret of Fatima, alternative versions developed, proposed by independent researchers, theologians, and Mariologists. These interpretations often differed radically from the official position and offered completely different explanations of the content of the mysterious revelation. French priest Abbé Michel de la Trinité developed the theory of the Great Apostasy, according to which the third secret predicted a crisis of faith within the Catholic Church itself. In his opinion, the vision of the bishop in white symbolized not the physical murder of the Pope, but the spiritual death of the church hierarchy, which had strayed from traditional Catholic doctrine. This interpretation gained support among traditionalist Catholic circles, especially after the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. Supporters of this theory saw the liberalization of the liturgy, ecumenical initiatives, and the softening of some church positions as the fulfillment of the Fatima prophecy about the internal decay of the Church. Italian theologian Don Luigi Villa proposed a geopolitical interpretation of the third secret. According to his version, the vision concerned not so much religious as political processes, the fall of Christian civilization under the onslaught of secularism and materialism. Could the Virgin Mary have foreseen the global changes that took place in the Western world in the second half of the 20th century? American researcher Father Nicholas Gruner developed the theory of the unfinished consecration of Russia. In his opinion, the third secret contained specific instructions on the form and time of the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of a Mary, which were not fully implemented by the church authorities. This, according to his version, explained the continuing world conflicts and crises. Portuguese researchers led by Dr. Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, not to be confused with the dictator, put forward a national interpretation of the third secret. They claimed that the prophecy referred to Portugal's special role in God's plan of salvation and predicted the revival of Christianity from Portuguese soil. A group of German Catholic intellectuals, including the philosopher Martin Heidegger in his later years, proposed an existential interpretation of the Fatima message. According to their views, the third secret did not refer to specific historical events, but to the existential crisis of modern man, who had lost touch with the transcendent. Why did so many alternative interpretations arise? And what does this say about dissatisfaction with the official version? The diversity of versions reflected both the complexity of the text of the third secret itself and the various expectations and fears of the modern Catholic community. Brazilian theologian Plínio Correia de Oliveira linked the third secret to a prophecy about the triumph of socialism in Catholic countries. His interpretation had a pronounced political slant and reflected the fears of conservative Catholics about leftist movements in Latin America. Mexican mystic and theologian Father Miguel Ángel Fuentes offered an apocalyptic interpretation, according to which the third secret predicted a great punishment for humanity for its sins. In his opinion, the assassination attempt on the Pope was only a harbinger of more serious trials that still await the world. An interesting version was put forward by Canadian researcher Yves Dupont, who linked the third secret to prophecies about the 3 days of darkness, an eschatological event mentioned in various Catholic revelations. According to his theory, Sister Lucia's vision described precisely this apocalyptic period. Polish theologian Father Stanislaw Kosinski, who was close to Pope John Paul II's circles, offered a Mariological interpretation. In his opinion, the third secret concerned not so much future events as the role of the Virgin Mary as co-redemptrix in the salvation of humanity. However, all these alternative versions remained hypotheses, since their authors did not have access to the full text of the secret. Sister Lucia dos Santos lived a long life, becoming the last living witness to the Fatima apparitions of 1917. After the deaths of her cousins in 1919 and 1920, she bore the entire burden of testimony about what she had seen in her childhood. Her last years were marked by attempts to clarify various aspects of the Fatima message, including the mysterious third secret. In 1925, Lucia entered the boarding school of the Sisters of Saint Dorothea in Vilar, where she received her education and began her religious life. In 1928, she took her vows in the same order. For many years, the nun avoided publicity and lived in seclusion, but she never stopped answering questions from church authorities about the events in Fatima. The turning point came in 1948, when Lucia joined the stricter Carmelite order in Coimbra, taking the name Sister Maria Lucia of the Immaculate Heart. What prompted her to make this decision at the age of 41, and how did it affect her testimony about the third secret? In the Carmelite convent, Lucia led a reclusive life, but continued to receive visitors, church hierarchs, theologians, and researchers of the Fatima apparitions. Many of them noted her remarkable memory and ability to reproduce details of events from 70 years ago with astonishing accuracy. Her last interviews, given in the 1990s, were particularly important. In a conversation with Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone in April 2000, shortly before the official disclosure of the third secret, Lucia confirmed the authenticity of the version being prepared for publication. However, her answers were brief and cautious. In an interview with Portuguese journalist Carlos Evaristo in 1993, Lucia made several cryptic remarks about the third secret. She said that everything has already been said, in the published parts of the Fatima message, but added that people should read more carefully. What did she mean by the need to read more carefully? The nun repeatedly emphasized that the third secret does not contain new revelations, but helps to better understand those already given. She said that Our Lady did not reveal the future out of curiosity, but called for prayer and repentance to change the course of events. This position contrasted with popular apocalyptic interpretations. In the last years of her life, Lucia was concerned about the commercialization of the Fatima cult and the emergence of numerous new revelations allegedly received by various visionaries. She insisted that the Fatima message was complete and did not need any additions or modifications. The nun reacted particularly painfully to attempts by some groups to use her name to promote their own interpretations of the third secret. She repeatedly stated that she had not given anyone the authority to speak on her behalf and asked believers to refer only to the official statements of the Church. Why did Lucia become more reserved in her statements about the third secret in the last years of her life? Some researchers have suggested that she was under pressure from the Vatican authorities, but there was no direct evidence of this. It is more likely that the elderly nun simply grew tired of constant questioning and preferred to focus on prayer. Sister Lucia died on February 13, 2005, at the age of 97, in a Carmelite convent in Coimbra. Her death marked the end of an era of living witnesses to the Fatima apparitions. With her passing, the last opportunity to obtain direct clarification on the controversial aspects of the third secret disappeared. After Lucia's death, the process of her beatification began in 2008. The Catholic Church recognized her heroic virtues and declared her blessed in October 2021. This recognition confirmed the official status of her testimony about the events at Fatima, including the third secret. In the 21st century, the controversy surrounding the third secret of Fatima has not only continued, but has taken on new dimensions. The development of the internet and social media has provided a platform for a multitude of conspiracy theories, alternative interpretations, and critical analyses of the Vatican's official position. Contemporary discussions reflect both traditional differences within the Catholic community and new challenges of the information age. Traditionalist Catholic circles continue to insist that the official disclosure is incomplete. Organizations such as the Fatima Center in America and the International Movement for the Consecration of Russia regularly publish materials claiming that the true content of the third secret is still being concealed by the Vatican. Supporters of the two texts theory are particularly active. According to this version, there are two different documents: the published description of the vision and a hidden text with the words of the Virgin Mary explaining its meaning. This theory gained new momentum after the publication in 2007 of documents related to the beatification of Francisco and Jacinta. Italian journalist Marco Tossati put forward the hypothesis of the existence of a fourth secret received by Lucia at a later date. In his opinion, the nun received additional revelations throughout her life, but the church authorities decided not to give them official status so as not to complicate an already controversial situation. Contemporary Catholic intellectuals are proposing new approaches to interpreting the Fatima legacy. Professor of Theology Roberto de Matteis from the University of Rome links the third secret to the current crisis of papal authority and the emergence of parallel magisteriums within the Church. How do the events of recent decades, the pedophilia scandals in the Church, the abdication of Pope Benedict XVI, the election of Pope Francis, affect the interpretation of the third secret? Some researchers see these upheavals as the fulfillment of the Fatima prophecies about the crisis in the church hierarchy. Pope Francis, elected in 2013, has shown caution in his approach to the subject of Fatima. During his visit to Fatima in May 2017, he canonized Francisco and Jacinta, but avoided detailed comments on the third secret. His approach can be characterized as a desire to demystify the revelations in favor of practical Christianity. Internet communities dedicated to Fatima actively discuss various aspects of the third secret. Forums and blogs are full of new theories, analyses of historical documents, and attempts to link the Fatima prophecies to current events, the COVID-19 pandemic, military conflicts, and the environmental crisis. Portuguese researchers continue to work in the archives, trying to find new documents related to the Fatima phenomena. In 2017, the correspondence between the Bishop of Leiria and the Vatican was published, shedding additional light on the decision-making process regarding the third secret. Why, more than 100 years after the Fatima apparitions, has interest in the third secret not waned, but sometimes even intensified? Contemporary researchers explain this by a crisis of confidence in the institutional church and a search for alternative sources of spiritual authority. Academic research on the Fatima phenomenon is becoming increasingly interdisciplinary. Sociologists study the influence of the Fatima cult on Portuguese society. Psychologists analyze the phenomenon of children's visions, and historians examine the political context of the events of 1917. However, disputes about the third secret remain primarily within the framework of religious discourse. Modern technology allows for detailed analysis of Lucia's handwritten documents. Graphological examinations confirm the authenticity of the published text of the third secret, but do not rule out the possibility of additional notes. More than 100 years after the Fatima apparitions of 1917, the third secret remains one of the most intriguing mysteries of modern Catholicism. Despite its official disclosure in 2000, questions about the completeness and accuracy of the Vatican's interpretation continue to preoccupy researchers, believers, and simply curious people around the world. An analysis of the entire history of the third secret shows that the mystery has raised far more questions than answers. The Vatican's 80 years of silence, the contradictory reactions of popes to the content of the document, and criticism of the official interpretation by authoritative researchers all create the impression of incompleteness and incompleteness of disclosure. The current state of the discussion can be characterized as a stalemate. Supporters of the official version point to the confirmation of the document's authenticity by Sister Lucia herself and the authority of the Church's magisterium. Critics cite structural and substantive arguments against the incompleteness of the disclosure and demand additional clarification. What factors could influence the further development of the situation with the third secret in the future? First of all, it is the possible discovery of new documents in the Vatican or Portuguese archives. Researchers continue their work, and discoveries that could shed new light on controversial aspects cannot be ruled out. The position of future pontiffs may play an important role. Each new pope has the opportunity to review the policies of his predecessors regarding the Fatima legacy. History shows that popes have had different attitudes toward the secrets of Fatima, ranging from complete silence to partial disclosure. Technological advances are opening up new opportunities for researching historical documents. Modern methods of analyzing texts, handwriting, paper, and ink can reveal details that were inaccessible to previous generations of researchers. discoveries may be made that confirm or refute existing theories. Social and political changes in the world also affect the relevance of the Fatima message. Contemporary crises, pandemics, wars, environmental disasters, religious conflicts, give rise to new attempts to find explanations and predictions of current events in the third secret. Will the third secret of Fatima remain a historical mystery, or will it ever be definitively resolved? The experience of other religious mysteries shows that full disclosure may prove less intriguing than the mystery itself. Perhaps the mystery of the third secret is valuable precisely because of its unresolved nature. The impact of the controversy surrounding the third secret on the Catholic Church cannot be overestimated. This controversy reflects deeper problems: the crisis of authority in the church hierarchy, the contradictions between traditionalism and modernism, and questions about the nature of divine revelation in the modern world. For many believers, the third secret has become a symbol of the search for truth in an age of information abundance and simultaneous distrust of official sources. The discussions surrounding it reflect broader trends in contemporary religious consciousness. Scientific study of the Fatima phenomenon continues in various disciplines. Historians are researching the political and social context of the events of 1917. Psychologists are analyzing the mechanisms of children's visions, and sociologists are studying the influence of the Fatima cult on contemporary society. Ultimately, the significance of the third secret of Fatima may lie not in its specific content, but in how different generations of believers have interpreted its meaning in the context of their own times. Perhaps the true value of this secret lies not in its unraveling, but in the spiritual quest it inspires. The third secret of Fatima remains an open page in the history of modern Catholicism, a page that future generations of researchers and believers have yet to write.